Our youth are really our most valuable human capital, and as Brian mentioned and others mentioned too, you know, if you neglect youth, they become long-term unemployed, you run into all sorts of social problems within our region. And as John just mentioned, you know, the time to engage with a young person is about year 10, and that's age 14. You know, people are starting to think about their futures. They're not necessarily certain of what their pathway will be. But what we've found in Southland is that we've surveyed hundreds and hundreds of young people in year 10, and surprisingly enough, they do have a very clear idea of what they want to do, what their aspirations are. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, they don't necessarily achieve those aspirations. But what we can say in Southland's case anyway is that young people, for example, young males, year 10, that the most popular activity for them is work associated with the primary sector, and whether it be farming, whether it be farm advisory work, whether it be working with the contractors that provide the electrical work, pump systems, transport, you name it. There's an aspiration to get involved in the primary sector and allied activities. The other thing is that in young females, we weren't sure what we would get there, but we found that it was the second most popular choice for young females in Southland, and that's across the board, across all schools, all social deprivation groups, etc. You know, that was a constant. The first choice for young ladies was nursing and health professional activities, but their second choice was agricultural support activities. The second interesting thing is that we have, one of the poorest things that we do as employers, that is, we don't tell young people what their career pathways are likely to be. What can you achieve if you come into this job? What is your potential? In some cases, there may not be a clear potential, but in many cases there is, and in many cases there's great opportunities. We had a young dairy farmer speak to us, the task force, who was on over $200,000 a year, started from South Auckland, an 18-year-old, I think 16-year-old or thereabouts, and now 24-year-old, 26-year-old owns his own herd, wants to own a farm by age 30, and has tremendous aspirations. And he came through a very hard background, and what he does now with his work team is actually work with them. He picks on kids that necessarily haven't necessarily had the kind of, they weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth, but he turns them into fantastic young people in his particular farming operation. So just a little bit about the province. 70% of our GDP, that's the money go around in Southland, is dedicated to export industry, and we have around 50,000 employees in the region, workers in the region. 5,800 are directly involved in the primary sector, and over and above that we have processing and value-added activities. But 22% of 16 to 19-year-olds in Invercargill, for example, are unemployed, and that's not in education, training or employment. And 45% of New Zealand's unemployment is represented in youth, 18 to 24. So it's, 15 to 24. So it's not a good statistic for our country as a whole, and the difficulty is that we have an ageing population, as we all know. So the Youth Futures program really concentrates on four main areas of activity, but basically we see that long term we need young people and people involved in our region, similar to what Brian spoke about. We need to, we've created a regional task force to respond to these activities, and we're really elevating the importance of the primary sector. What I didn't say in that previous slide is that we produce 15% of all New Zealand's tradable exports out of a population of 94,000 people and less than 50,000 workers. So it's a fairly impressive record for a region such as Southland. If you combine Southland and Taranaki together, we're over 35% of everything that we trade internationally, and that is very significant. However, when you've got a small population and a small workforce, you don't have a great deal of resilience. So we don't have a lot of capacity to naturally fill positions when we're in this situation. So we've elevated the importance of the primary sector through the program. we're now trying to work on streamlining the pathways into the sectors. So from schools and from young people that are unemployed through the training organisations through to employment. That's the aim. We want to streamline that process. And one of the key areas of activity is that we need to look at the employers. And in the past, and no disrespect to any one organisation or multiple organisations, we've always had this kind of ability to rock up and get enough people. And there hasn't, probably for the last 15 to 20 years, we haven't really truly invested in young people. You know, the natural pathways which occurred through apprenticeships, which occurred through large institutional trainers and so on, organisations that train large numbers of young people into careers, that they've gone by the wayside by and large. And we're now in a situation where we have to look closely at what we're doing. Joe over here has been appointed as the regional coordinator. Many of you know Joe. Rhiannon down the back did all of the groundwork on this program, and she did a fabulous job. But basically what it showed was that in Southland, and no different to any other region, by and large there's collaboration in some areas, but there's some areas that we need to improve, and that's what we're about trying to do. This is the regional task force, and I'm sure you'll see that there's some really excellent names, and there's a number of other people that are associated with the program and are actively supporting the program as well. One of the key things is that we've got big employers stepping up and saying, look, we want to be involved in this sort of activity, and we believe that we have to for the future of our industry. Mentioned earlier, 900 young people 15 to 24 age group. The last census period and those figures change a little bit, but essentially there is a pool of people that are not in education, training or employment, and for our region, and I'll explain this shortly, for our region it's vitally important that we try and engage those young people. Dr. Natalie Jackson has undertaken some work. We commissioned, Venture Southland commissioned this piece of work here, and it looks at our workforce through to 2014 to 2031. And what does it look like in Southland? Well, I'll tell you what it looks like. Our situation is that we lose about 1,150 workers a year, and that's either become deceased or people retire into whatever their activities are. But by 2031, and Brian mentioned 1,600 jobs in the Clutha district, in Southland it's around about 4,000 jobs a year that we have to fill for a variety of different industries, but a majority of those are primary and primary related service industries. So you can't get away from the fact that we're a producing region by and large. So what does that mean? By 2030 we will have a deficit in available jobs of around 12,000 full-time equivalent positions, which is quite a significant challenge. So how do we deal with that? Well, the reality is that it's not simply going to be solved by employing all the young people we can employ in the region, simply because our death rate is greater than our birth rate. You know, it's just a fact of life. And by 2031, 25% of our population will be over 65. So, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that actually, you know, we need to engage our young people, and we need to encourage young people to stay, or at least encourage other young people to come into the region. So the strategy has been finalised, and we're working through that, and the youth element of it, we would say, is a vital part of that strategy. It's not vital in total numbers, but the effect of engaging youth in gainful employment is fundamental to having a healthy region and a healthy society in the south. And as Gary's not here at the moment, but as Gary will tell you, in his former role as a police officer, when you deal with young unemployed, you run into all sorts of challenges, particularly if beyond 6 months of unemployment. We want to avoid that like the plague. So basically, we're looking for a program that delivers social good as well as industry opportunity for young people, and we want to build some sort of cohesive approach, and that's really what this program is about. So the areas of activity that we're focusing on, we've touched on previously. I won't bore you with that. But the area that we're looking at today is employer excellence standards and employer network and HR training and mentoring. Now, We run in Southland, we have about 60 industry mentors. We have, with young farmers, around 200 more farmer mentors coming on board, and some of those are on board already. And alongside that, we have run a regional partnership program, and basically we want to put all our efforts behind this kind of initiative and help employers to develop their skills. A big part of our industry in the south is small, medium enterprises, and small business struggles because you just don't have the numbers of people on the ground to address some of the challenges that are going forward. So we're trying to help employers to gain those skills, or at least share their knowledge with other people that have the skills. And we've done this very successfully in the Lean program, and I'm pleased to see Steve and the Balance team here today, because they were one of the first people to get involved in lean initiatives, and the Dairy Hub and various others have engaged in those sort of opportunities. And what lean business programs teach you is how to be better at what you do. It's about how you minimise waste, and minimising waste, you minimise the waste of human resource, and you appreciate what you've got because it provides a productive pathway for your business. So this is the focus of today's activities. And what we're looking at in this employee excellence model is that we're looking for businesses that are prepared to connected with the primary industry, that are interested in investing in youth. And we talk about this program as being invest in youth, because we've got to come back to the future. We've got to say, come back to what we did in the past, do it better, but we've got to look at the potential in young people and make a solid commitment to that. And basically we're keen to get a group of people together with the same kind of philosophy. And what does this mean for an employer? An employer that is interested in investing in youth, and many of you as employers here today have expressed this, and many others who couldn't be here today have said, look, we want to sign up to this. But what we're looking at is a group of businesses that are prepared to connect with educators and schools, create that connection. Look at providing insights into careers and careers opportunities and career pathways, which you can see this is a Macaulay Ford example here. Well done, Macaulay Ford. But this is the pathway that they offer for the young people, and there's others there. There's John and the Allied Group and various others have identified pathways for young people. That's really important. You know, you need to be able to show those pathways. Need to get involved in career type events. Now, John mentioned, and many others have mentioned, that some of the traditional career events haven't really spun their wheels. I spoke to a guy last year, he's a local painter, and he won't mind me saying this, but his name's Herman Morsink, and he wanted young apprentices, and he couldn't get young apprentices. So he put a sign up, and apprentices wanted, and everybody walked past and sort of did a sideways shuffle, and he didn't get anybody. So the next time he came along, he parked the boat in the Careers Expo and the motorbike and a couple of other things, and all of a sudden everybody, they're all over it like a rash. How did you get that? He says, look, it might not be the most glamorous job in the world, but this is the path. This is what you can actually achieve if you are willing to work hard, and you can be your own boss and you won't have a debt. And he managed to fill his complement of young people in that occasion, and was able to refer others to other people. So that's what we're looking at, a kind of a different way of doing this. Provide ways for young people to gain work experience. So gateway, whatever the pathway is, then let's look at those. Employment opportunities, ultimately at the end of the day, you might have people on work experience, and you might have 5 young people over time that you take on work experience, but there's 1 or 2 of those that are really potentially good employees, and that's really what it's all about. It's trying to expose young people to the opportunity, and try and provide a positive work environment. And a bit like what John was saying, you can easily bag people for what they're not doing well, but actually a bit of positive reinforcement goes a long way towards developing young people's self-esteem and interest in their particular job, and then provide more of a mentoring approach, and have mentors that can mentor your teams as well. And that's really what the employee excellence model is about in terms of the aspirations and guidance, and we're really keen to engage with businesses that have the same kind of philosophy, and that's what the task force is really asking for here. In terms of Venture Southland's commitment to these programs, what we really want to do is provide resources and assistance with around mentoring and how to develop good employer practices and employment practices. There's no rocket science in this stuff, it's common sense, but often it can be seen as a big challenge for particularly smaller business, but not even smaller businesses. We're looking at trying to network, provide opportunities for businesses to come together and share and deal with some of the challenges they're facing. We're looking at creating connections with schools, and I can say the task force, one of the early achievements of the task force was to get every secondary school represented in the program, which is a huge step forward, I have to tell you, because in the past we've had some businesses that were, some schools that were engaging and some that weren't. So every secondary school in Southland is participating and has a representative on the, not individual representative, but a representative on the task force. Facilitating for youth in primary industry, really what we're trying to do is create this pathway, as I mentioned earlier. I won't elaborate any more than that. Promote business engaged in the program. So what we're saying is that businesses that participate in the program should be proud of the fact that they're prepared to invest in youth. And it should be a tag or a byline on your business or on your website or on whatever, on your salutation, on your emails, It's something you need to be proud of, and encourage schools to develop career readiness for young people. There's quite a bit of work to be done there. The CAPE group and various other groups are beavering away, but it needs more. And I guess what we're trying to do is to work through this program and through the work that you do with schools to develop that awareness. And we have had a very poor drafting gate, to put an agricultural phrase into the discussion. And that is, we have probably encouraged a lot of people to take up academic careers when they're not really academics. 49% of all people that go into university, for example, fail. They don't complete their program. They come out of the program, come out of the university with a debt and a failure. Now, a young person engaging in a program in an industry, learning in industry or undertaking other activities can quickly move through the system, as it's been pointed out today, and be free of debt and able to do all sorts of wonderful things with their lives. Now, I'm not suggesting there's horses for courses, of course, and I know my own family situation. 5 of my children have gone to university, and they're all gainfully employed and all that sort of thing. But I would have been quite happy if they'd gone and become engineers, sheet metal workers, tradespeople, and some of them had the aptitude to do that, but they chose that path. But the reality is that we need to encourage young people to have clear ideas about their future. We need the systems within the schools to guide them through to that aspiration, and ultimately we want them to be connected to a local employer. Even if they trundle off overseas and do their OE, which is healthy, we want them to know that there's an opportunity in the south for their skills, to apply their skills. So that's really what the program's about, and I guess from our point of view today, this is really just to say, look, we're hoisting the flag up the pole. This is the start of the program, and you guys are the engaged early foundation members. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.